Does my third eye come through? All right. Oh, okay. It does. Um, I got the Divine Comedy yesterday. And it's a really good book. I've only read up to page 1, which is technically page 16. But it's a collection of it's just a big poem. It's the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Now I enjoy this a lot because it says here it's the Divine Comedy. And what does that mean? What does that mean, the Divine Comedy? You know, this cover strikes me in a curious way because I see these two men, and I see all these people in their own holes, and I wonder, you know, what inclined the divine self, the one being that there is, to do such a thing to itself as to be in purgatorio, or even the inferno. Now you see this guy here. So in the story, Dante, I'm not quite sure that Dante knows the truth that we're all one and that we are all the one self. But this guy looks like he does. But this guy, his name is Virgil. Virgil is a representation of Dante's human intellect, his human reason, which helps guide him up to Paradiso. But then once you get to Paradiso, you can no longer use the human reasoning. But then that's when you have to abandon the human reasoning to divine love, to divine beauty, to a being that they call Beatrice. And now, so his name is Virgil, and I'm a Virgo. And Virgos are known for their intellectual reasoning. And so this guy is the representation of the reasoning. But that's not even the point I was going to say. So just imagine these two people are divine entities, and they just know that, like, of course it's you. Of course. And you create everything that you experience. So you just look at this guy, he's like, this is so odd. Why would he ever create this for himself? Why? This is so strange. Oh. And then he's like, yes. This is the way of the infinite. Now, I've called it the Divine Comedy because it's a comedy. It's a play. It's a show. And it's funny because it's the divine self, not even knowing that it's the divine self, just creating all sorts of illusions, all sorts of nightmares, all sorts of beautiful places, all sorts of paradises, thinking that it's an individual ego and that wherever it goes, it has earned its spot there. It is true. You have earned your spot there because you created it for yourself. It's like hell in its own right doesn't exist. There could never be a place. It's like when you're given the idea of such a place existing, you're encouraged to create it for yourself, then you create it for yourself because the divine self creates everything. Everything is created. Nothing that you experience is not created by you. Seriously, because the one self that there is, the one consciousness that there is the one consciousness. And it's funny because all these people going through Purgatorio and the Inferno and Paradiso don't even know that they're the entire divine self. It's just the divine self not knowing, just going through the wheels of the toil of samsara, right? And when you get to Paradiso, you think that you're the man, and you think that you've accomplished it all. But you can only sharpen a knife so much, and then you go down the wheel, and then you go up. But it's like, as long as you think that you're an individual self that exists, you'll just keep going on the wheel. And the funny thing about it is that there's no need for you to even stay on the wheel. Right now, at this moment, you could say, I've had enough of this. I'll admit it to myself. I'm the divine self. However you want to do that. I mean, how do you do that if you've never had the experience for yourself? How do you seriously say, yeah, it's me. It's me, and it's been me all along, and that's it. I'm just the divine self, figuring out who I am. And it's like this entire culture is different ways of figuring out who you are. Like, you can use like people identify themselves with like sports figures or the American flag or with music or something like that, or spirituality, or with religion, or with divine, and you identify yourself with that. And the establishment gives you so many different combinations of ways. Here, this is what you are. This is what you are. Blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that you're the blank slate from which everything comes. Because you can never not be that. So it's like just the divine comedy. And I wonder. T.S. Eliot commented on this book, and T.S. Eliot once said. Had a poem where it said like, a man in the street nods. All the people in the street move in strange democracy. The million masks of God. The million masks of the Joker, Alan Watts says. But T.S. Eliot commented on this, so I just wonder if... No, he knows. Right? He has to know. Of course he does. Dante. It's all the divine self. So it's like you go through all the realms and you see all the different people thinking that they are something, and creating some sort of terrible torture for themselves. I want to go look at the pictures in this book. Now, I'm sure some of the imagery would be quite appealing to the eye. Just like the apple of my eye. Illustrations, there we go. So page 38, Hell, the 7 circles. Oh, it's a map. Yep. And imagine it's all the divine self, just pretending that it's not. 140, page 140. Oh, they're just different maps. Let's see the Mystic Rose. How about that? Mystic Rose, the lotus flower. The lotus flower upon which you sit. Now, hey, give yourself credit, because if you haven't figured out that you're the divine self, then, but you know you are, it's a hard thing to really realize. I mean, my God, it's ultimate. It's the ultimate thing. It's better than heaven. What's better than heaven? What's beyond heaven and hell? What's beyond heaven and hell is you. And that's what the aliens know. The extraterrestrials know. They all know, plainly and simply, just the most simple fact, right? That the inside and the outside do go together, and that there's just one universe, and that there's just one, right? So you are that one. And they know the simple fact, and everybody who has lived on this earth and not known it, it's like, it's the divine comedy. We all play it so serious. We're all fools. We're fooling ourselves because we don't know we're the divine self. It's like, it's the comedy because it's the divine self just being a fool. Yeah, I'll be reading this. It's a thick book. There's so many books that I've stopped reading in the middle. I finished uh, Alan Watts' myths book. It was about different myths, like mythology of the universe, like describing, because you can't really say like what the truth is. It's so like, ugh, like you can't like seriously say it in words unless you have like the Egyptian language or something so descriptive. So not descriptive, but something so like in this in the translation of this, it talks about the English language translating Italian to the English language, and it's like it uh, it just reminded me of how our entire language is just meant to be a scientific and descriptive language, just meant to describe the world. Like there's I don't want to flip to the page, but there's a poem where it's like an Italian mother comes out and it's like she tastes the day, and the day is Dio. and so like other languages like describe like the feeling and emotion of life, whereas our language is like judging. It's like analytical. Like, and then it says compared to that, it's a Missouri woman judges the day. It is good out today. Because our language is not like an emotional, romantic language, but rather it's a descriptive and scientific language meant to be on pages to describe the universe that God made. It's and to measure it. That's what the point of our language. Whereas other languages are languages meant for living, but the English language is like a dummy language. So how could you ever describe the truth of what is in terms of the English language? You could say you're it, but then I tell you that, and you're like, "What do you mean? I'm it?" And I say, "Well," and then I gotta put it in myth form. So Alan Watts had a whole book on myths, and I read that whole book, and then and then I read Alan Watts' the book, The Taboo on Knowing Who You Are, and I just read that straight to finish. That was such an easy book to read because I loved it. And then I read the Bible up to page 155, and I'm 157 now, and I'm like stopping in between, and I've read just a little bit of the beginning of the I Ching, but I wish I took a I wish I guess like wanted to read more. I know billionaires like are known to read more, but it's like when you're not a billionaire, you don't want to read. But when you are a billionaire, you do want to read. It's weird. Um, and what else have I read? Have I read part of? Um, this book called Chosen. Uh, just like oh, like 100 pages of the secret oral teachings by Alexandria David Neal. Yep, it's a good book. Haven't finished it yet. uh, and then what else? I don't know. Who cares, right? Now, the United States, as I know, is a country meant to be a powerhouse. So it's I think the original intention for the United States was to be a powerhouse uh, machine, right? A powerhouse industrial machine to rule the seas, right? To help Britain rule the seas and to become rich, right? And conquer North America, basically. And the only way to do that is to make everybody basically dumb. If everybody is basically dumb, then they'll just work for you and do whatever you want, right? They'll be smart enough to work the machines, but but they won't be smart enough or able, given the opportunity, to sit and think about their existence or read books like this. So this occurred to me when I was reading the translator's note, and uh, it was specifically when when I was reading this part. It says, certainly any man who is word sensitive is likely to linger over the difference between the long drawn Italian carinna and the common, though imprecise, American usage cute when applied to an attractive child. The physical gestures the two words invite are at the least different, as the Italian's goodbye wave, fa ciao carinna, with the palm of the hand up, and the American child's wave bye bye with the back of the hand up. So look at the difference between the language we speak. The language we speak codes the way we see the actual reality, right? So the language we speak is the bits and pieces of the thoughts we have, right? And the concepts are born out of the elasticity and the type of language we have. If it wasn't the type of language we have, our thoughts and ability to think, and then therefore the way we see the world and identify the world, is based on the elasticity of how much our language will spread, and our the type of language we have in general. But when I see the word carina compared to the word cute, it's like other languages have a much more rich language, rich in fervor and life, carina, whereas that has different muscles to it, right? As it says later, words have different muscles. They differ in muscularity. So carina is a different, gives you, even though it means cute, like you call me cute, but cute has a different connotation than that. Cute, like the connotations that we have in our language are more simple, and it's like modern Chinese too. Modern Chinese is you say one word in a certain instance, and instantly, because you're from that culture, you know exactly what that person is saying. But if you don't say something that is already like a cultural phrase or understood, already being recycled through speech in that culture, if it's not an already culturally understood phrase that has been repeated over and over and over again, then you won't understand it. So it's like simple languages, like you say one thing, you say water, and then someone gives you water. So our language is similar, where it's like we want fast and precise communication as fast as possible. The Chinese are doing that much better, and that's what our establishment is trying to go for. Is we're looking at the Chinese and we're saying, yeah, so they're the experiment, and however they go, we're going to copy them. So our government is really trying to copy the Chinese, and our language is like still it still is rich, but they're trying to reduce the language. But basically, our culture, Fao Chow, Karina, and then wave bye bye. It's like our people don't think twice about what they do, and it's like we have a much dumber culture, and than a lot of people. You can blame that on the language itself, because our language is a scientific language meant to describe the world. We've reduced the language so much in the 1800s, and we had to borrow so many words from Latin, from French, from German, from Spanish even, and we had to change our language in order to even talk about our life, because we reduced our language so much in the attempt to make it a scientific and just descriptive language, which reduces our thought. And if you read, I read not the entirety of 1984, but I've also read Animal Farm. Animal Farm is really good. That was a quick really good read. 1984, I was really interested in the language because the language is the way we think, and that's how you mind control a population. Is you create their minds, and then obviously you can control them. So the language you give them is the mind that they use. And then this is the example of the poem that the translator actually created himself. So it says, "My mother, facing a day in Avellino, tasted it. Una dolce giornata." Tasted the day, right? My wife's mother in Protestant Missouri judges it. It is a good day. What sounds better? What feels better to you? Una dolce giornata, or it is a good day. Sorry, I don't mean to say it with that accent. It is a good day. Una dolce giornata. Which had more oomph to it? Which had more life? The English language or Italian? Right? So these are two distinct kinds of muscularity. Other kinds could certainly be adduced, and all must function in the effort to make, and all must function in the effort one must make to find truly equivalent language. I find translation very interesting because it's like with the Bible, you can't translate Hebrew, straight ancient Hebrew to English. It's not A to B like that. So it's not like X equals Y. There's no, so some words in Hebrew do not exist. The meaning of it does not exist in English. Just like in 1984, there was no meaning for political freedom. There was no concept for political freedom. There was no concept for intellectual freedom. The word free in 1984 in Newspeak meant this. You use the word free in the sentence like, this dog is free from lice, or this field is free from weeds. But in Newspeak, there is no concept for political or intellectual freedom, just in the same way there might be political or intellectual freedom in ancient Hebrew that we don't even have a concept for in English. So it's like translating that is hard because there's an example here. It says the word anxiety. The word anxiety. You could have a word for the word in one language. The word anxiety could. This is what it said. I can't really find it right now. The word anxiety in one language means what to do when, to shift examples. One language uses the word denoting anxiety whose essential meaning is based on the history of medieval torture, when the only word in another language that will render that denotation is based on the history of, say, internal combustion engines. So it's like, what if it's basically saying in one language you have a word for anxiety, but then in another language you have nothing for what that other word means. So what are you to do when you try to translate that word into modern English? You try your best, right? So that's what they did with the Bible. That's what they did with this, and same with Greek, right? Ancient Greek. I've also read part of the Hermetica or the book, the Hermetica, like the translated English book, and it says that Egyptian pharaohs would criticize even ancient Greek. Now, the more ancient the languages get, the more rich and the more rich they are, right? And the more they can actually describe the actual world, the more wide they are in terms of meaning than modern English. But even the ancient Egyptians said it's a shame because giving our knowledge to the Greeks, that their language is so is so showy, and is so like dramatized, and it in no way describes what we are trying to convey in our teachings. Can you imagine speaking ancient Egyptian, like knowing ancient Egyptian? It's funny. I saw online there was a picture of the Egyptian alphabet, and then there is there is 24 symbols or 26 symbols for the Egyptian alphabet, and for each symbol there was a letter of our alphabet corresponding to that. So there was like A is this, B is this, like it's like I just wonder what it's like to speak that language, because that language is not a language like the language we speak in any way. And it's funny that they had a picture say with our alphabet, saying that the Egyptian alphabet could be translated with 26 symbols exactly translated to the Egyptian. There's a lot of misinformation about the Egyptian race, the ancient Egyptians. Let me find an example. If you just go to Google, the Egyptian language, and then you find a picture, there's this. They had an alphabet. It's like there's so many different things you could look at. And it's like, oh, this fish translates to H with a line, with an underlying line, and then to and then to I'm sorry. And it's like I just wonder what it's like actually reading the Bible in its original form, instead of translated and also reduced quite heavily. I read not not the entire thing, but the Gospel of Thomas, and that was really funny because that's like an interview with Jesus, and he's really funny. And of course they took that out, and of course it's funny because when you mention the Gospel of Thomas in